responsible for Grangertown. There was Richard Granger, who was a builder. There was John Dobson, who was the architect. And there was John Clayton, who was the town clerk. He put all the finances together. He was quite clever with money at the time. But those three people were mainly responsible for the building of Grangertown, with all these beautiful neoclassical buildings that you see. They stretch down to sort of cathedral and round by the central station and up to here. And they've all got streets named after them. Of course, we've got Granger Street, Clayton Street around there, Granger Market, and we've got John Dobson Street, which is a funny old street, which is the other side of the City Library. Okay, the music hall, seemingly in 1816, Charles Dickens read excerpts from his work here. It used to be like a lecture hall, or a lecture room as it was called. They had exhibitions and concerts between 1911 and 1937. It was the Gaiety Cinema. The cinema lasted until 1949 when it closed after failing an inspection by the licensing authorities. They must have all sat in the rows watching the film, drinking, and I don't think they were allowed to do that, you know. Anyway, they closed the cinema down. Most of the building was demolished in 1964, and all you see, all that's left is just the front. The rest has got Eldon Square Shopping Centre behind.
Visitor to Newcastle to give talks. Absolutely nothing to do with the fact he had a mistress.
I was going to say, he probably had a girlfriend. He probably had a girlfriend here. He seemingly liked the ladies. Okay, let's wander around to the monument and down towards the Theatre Royal. Also erected to celebrate the passing of the Reform Act in 1832, which gave middle-class men, just middle-class men, the opportunity to vote. So to vote in those days, you had to be a businessman of some type. You couldn't vote. It wasn't until 1928 that everyone under 21 was allowed to vote, thanks to the wonderful work of those lady suffragettes. And we'll point out the suffragettes, where in Newcastle the suffragettes used to meet. That's on the way down. Okay, so we'll make our way to the Theatre Royal. George III, the original Theatre Royal, opened on Drury Lane off Mosley Street, and we'll have a look at that lane as we go down there. Some facts about the theatre. One of England's leading theatres. It opened in 1788, obviously down there, then moved back up here when Richard Granger built Grangertown. It was decided that the new theatre should be rebuilt, and it was built here in 1837. A huge fire broke out in 1899 in this building, following a performance of William Shakespeare's Macbeth. And it destroyed the entire interior of the building. Strangely enough, some theatre types seem to think that the Macbeth play is cursed. So it's a bit spooky, that one. And so much so that they won't say the name Macbeth. They call it the Scottish play. Yeah, so they won't say Macbeth. Which plays on it? It's the Scottish play. Scottish play. And the interior is redesigned by a famous theatre architect and designer called Frank Matcham, and it reopened in 1901. Over the years, many great names have been on its stage. Sir Laurence Olivier, Judi Dench, as well as Hollywood greats like Orson Welles, Charlton Heston and Jack Lemmon. And it's Ian McKellen's favourite theatre, so I'm told. And he's appeared here many times, and once he was completely naked on the stage during a performance of King Lear. Legend has it, we're talking about ghosts again, there's a ghost called the Grey Lady of the Gallery. The story goes that a young lady fell in love with an actor who was performing at the theatre. They planned to run away together, but instead he ran away by himself. And she saw him leaving, and she leant over the gallery and fell to her death. Love is tough.
Turks Hotel was opposite, so a lot of stars stayed there. Just here, where it was.
When they'd been at the theatre?
Yeah, they worked there.
Yeah.
Same, my grandmother was a maid there, and she got fantastic rewards, apparently, from my mum was telling me. Because all the stars left them big gifts, people that left there, like looked after their rooms or whatever.
Fantastic.
You're making Charlton Heston's bed or something.
Wow. Here we just, on the subject of the Royal Turks Hotel, we just point that out because there's a plaque that tells you about the suffragettes that used to hold meetings there in the hotel. And he thought was one of the first type of people to do this type of painting. I can tell you about it now because it shows. And Alexander they wouldn't want to catch me talking about his art, mentioning Norman Cornish if he was in. You know? But this is like typical Norman Cornish, and if you look at the Norman Cornish original, you talk about back lens, and he's taken a lot of his influence from Norman Cornish, who was an amazing painter. It was actually a pitman that went to night classes and then just suddenly started painting. He was touched by the hand of God, a fantastic painter.
Was it a group?
Sorry?
Was he part of a group? Or was it just
no, Pitman paint, that was Spennymoor. Norman Cornish was in Spennymoor. The Pitman paint came from Ashington. And there's some fantastic paintings in the Woodhorn Colliery Museum, just north of Ashington. Well worth a look. Okay. Some great collection of miners' banners, you know, the Union banners.
Okay.
Well worth looking at those as well. This was where the original Theatre Royal was. Drury Lane. Seemingly there's a council order in, a stopping order to have this blocked up. Because it's not, other than the fact it's the original area for the Theatre Royal, it doesn't have much of an interest really. But I haven't been down and around the corner. I don't particularly want to explore down there.
Even on a Sunday morning.
I certainly wouldn't go down there at night.
You don't mind the smell.
I think it's used as a beer garden now.
Is it big out? Shall I go and have a look?
Yes.
Yeah, well, shall we want to go and have a look? Goes through to the bottom of the big market. Didn't know that. Wow. Can you imagine? This will be absolutely. The local term is minging.
I think so too.
Which will forever be associated with the anthem, the Blaydon Races.
Yeah.
Now you can say what you like about football supporters. You know, sometimes they get a bad rep, but they are keeping the song alive. Yeah. If it wasn't for the football supporters, nobody would hear of the Blaydon Races. Does anybody know what the Blaydon Races were?
Horse race.
Horse races. Absolutely. Horse racing. Yet now, people think it's a running race. But it was horse racing.
There's an island, isn't there? Well, there was an island.
Yeah,
that's where
it was in the middle of the, was it in the middle of the time?
Stairs. You know where the stairs are?
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's an island in the middle of the time.
That's where they had the racing.
They put a plaque up as well.
It used to be end up like the King's Meadows Island.
I don't know the name of it, but
Oh, yeah.
seen it
You know
from-
the
it's
island.
not there anymore, can't you?
No, not that anymore. But
just
the
noticed that.
island has been taken away because
Yeah.
they need the traffic
Yeah,
of the.
Dunstan Stairs, you know where they just drop the cove?
Yeah, the wooden bridge.
Yeah, the wooden air structure.
But the Blaydon Races was sung here for the first time by the guy that wrote it, a fellow called Geordie Ridley, who was a renowned Gateshead-born singer and songwriter. It was built as a public house and music hall in 1859 and as the music salon or saloon. The music hall closed in 1895 and was destroyed by fire in 1899. The replacement building, what you can see, was designed by A. Stockwell, and it was originally known as the Carlton Hotel. It was a billiard hall, and later it was converted to Bamburgh's Music Hall again. It's in a bit of a disused condition, but it's been renovated. But it's taken them a long time to renovate the building. They want to get it right. Okay, what we're going to do now is work our way around into the Lang Art Gallery and have a look at some of the old paintings. And you've got tall ships on the Tyne. Well, the Lantern Tower used to have a light in it, and that used to guide the ships up the river. But it's such a welcoming place. There's some beautiful carved woodwork in there, and the staff and the vicars are so welcoming. And there's a fantastic cafe in there.
At the back.
Yes,
and it's
Cafe
so
16.
well stocked.
Yeah, and great cakes in there and tea. Very nice. And it is such a welcoming. And
now the name is
lived near Killingworth, just on the edge of Killingworth. And George Stephen was the inventor of the railways. He didn't actually invent the steam engine, but he invented the railway system. And he used to come, Killingworth's about 10 miles away. And when his son was at school, George Stevenson used to go to the Lytton Phil Library, that library over there, with a banner up there. And he used to get George Stevenson used to go around the mines around the area because he used to have pumps to pump the water out, and George Stevenson used to keep the pumps going. And he used to have a company. He didn't have a company car. This is going back to early 1800s. He had a company horse. He used to ride around the mines, and his son Robert, he sent them to private school in Newcastle. And that was, you get say 10 miles from Newcastle to Killingworth, and he bought him a donkey so he could get to school. I mean, that's just over 200 years ago.
yeah.
Things have just changed, ridiculous. But yeah, the Lytton Phil, that's where George Stevenson used to go to that very library.
That's really good.
Yeah, it's amazing. Amazing place.
Would have been lovely telling you, John, we're only getting you a second hand.
Yeah, I get the 63 home. I get the 63 home. George Stevenson went home on a horse.
Kids these days and the electric scooter, they don't know what it's like to ride on the donkey.
Still got donkeys.
Yeah, so they've got good nowadays to get a lift, don't they? A lot of kids. Okay. Dear sign that was in 1929. Gaumont closed on the 29th of November 1958, and it became a 60s dance hall. The largest crowd assembly were on a Saturday night at this dance hall, right? The women had their frocks on with their petticoats, and the fellas used to be Jackson Taylor across the road. They used to go to the dances in their 30 bob suits. Now how much it costs for a suit? You wouldn't get much for 30 bob.
Not from Jackson's, you wouldn't.
No. Live music in the 60s was provided by The Who appeared here, the Small Faces, and the Beatles seemingly performed 3 times in that building.
Can I just say that the Kinks played there? The Kinks were there, they're an old 60s band, very famous.
Lazy Sunday afternoon, didn't they say that?
That's it, yeah. They went for a drink in the bar here, and they had musical differences, which they decided they were setting on the street, so they had a big punch up outside. The singer had a black eye, his brother had 2 black eyes.
Ray Davis, wasn't it?
Yeah, Ray Davis had 1 black eye. The guitarist, his brother Dave Davis, had a broken nose and 2 black eyes, and the bassist, he was just a complete mess. And the drummer was untouched because he was the best fighter. Not a mark.
That's the Kinks,
The Kinks are, yeah.
Rock and roll.
Yeah.
Rock and
I
roll.
think there's a plaque in there, there should have been. But there isn't.
Let's have a look. It was called the Majesty anyway when they had the dancers and all the pop bands were playing there. It didn't sell alcohol. and the audience had dried up literally by 1967 and became part of the Gala leisure chain, which was bingo. The only full houses were in on the bingo cards. In 2005, the building was bought by the Academy Music Group and reverted to a music venue where Amy Winehouse, Adele and Katy Perry have played there. So it's got quite a history in that, lots in there. But originally it was the new Westgate Cinema.
It's not a separate thing, but it's a design on the
There were some fine houses on here, and in the 1600s, all the movers and shakers in the city used to live in these houses. And, like Lord Mayors, and inside here is still the old plasterwork. He built the theatre in 1867 and for its date was the best equipped in the north. It was later converted into a cinema called the Stall. There's an advert on the side of that building about talkies, I think it says, for the cinema. The decline in cinema's popularity due to the invention of television meant that the cinema closed for several years, and it was in a bit of a ruined state. But there was a fella called Jack Dixon that did a load of work on bringing the theatre back to life. That was in 1974. He got possession of the building and did a load of work. He was quite famous in the area, and it wouldn't have been the theatre it is now if it hadn't been for Jack Dixon. Newcastle City Council own it now, and they work with the Tyne Theatre and Opera House Preservation Trust to run the theatre, and there's seemingly they're going to spend a lot of money on updating it because it needs a bit of updating now because it hasn't been really much done since the 80s. Although with a big building, no matter how much you do, things always fall off, but there's a lot of money going to be spent on this to bring it back to the glory days that it had. Like the Tyne Theatre, there's a ghost. Died in 1887 after a cannonball which came loose from a machine that they used in the theatre to create thunder. It came loose from the machine up a height and landed on his head. Seemingly he's got his own seat in the theatre. That's all cute. Now we can have a look at the front from over there, but there's just something I want to show you. It's quite unusual. Just look at these doors. Anybody know why they're so tall? You know the screens that they have at the back of the theatre with the scenery on? To take the screens in. Yeah. A lot of theatres have doors like that. It's quite unusual. So we're going to walk past the front of the theatre, and I'll show you where the Westgate Music Hall was. Okay. And then we'll go across the road, or you can come down the side. There's places where you can sit, maybe do a little bit of sketching.
We don't have we're going to go back to do the sketch.
All right,
because,
okay.
and we didn't give out the...
Okay. Well,
Chat
if you've had a
book.
good look round and taken some photographs, we can go back to the hub and we can work on our chat books. I'll just show you mine that I'm working on, which is for today. I've done a couple. This was the first one I did when I met Steve. It was the Newcastle was originally a bridge over the Tyne, and this was the chap which I did, and it was Pons Aelius, which is I think Bridge of Aelius, who was the emperor for the at the time. And some people do theatres and that sort of stuff, or the detail in the architecture. I thought that what I wanted to do was a bit about Bobby Robson, who was an absolute gentleman.
Yes.
Some detail in the architecture, but then I looked at some of the oldest pubs in Newcastle, which is the Old George, the Bodega, which is just down the road, which we walked past, the Strawberry, and the Crown Posada.
Oh yes.
These some of the oldest pubs in Newcastle. So that was that. But I'm working on one for this sketch walk at the minute. So I thought I'd have theatre curtains on the front, and then we've got the Theatre Royal, the Music Hall, Bambra's, New Town Theatre, and on the other side just going to be a bit of information and some of the detail from the architecture. These are the columns from the front of the theatre there, around the corner.
Correct me on nothing they're called.
That I think is from Bambra's Music Hall, and that one was from the side of the Theatre Royal. So that was how I planned it out. So just an idea, you know. Okay, so we'll go past the theatre. We'll look at the. There's a little theatre just around the corner. Look at that, and then we can have a look at the frontage of the Tyne Theatre just from across the road. And then we'll work our way back to the hub. It's now part of the Tyne Theatre, but at one time it was a theatre in its own right. And inside here, we still have the what's called a raked stage. Seemingly a raked stage is a sloping stage, which they had in theatres so that the audience who were on a level could see the actors at the back of the stage. And all over the world, a lot of theatres have raked stages, but I think that recently, with developments in concrete and that, what they decided to do was they discovered that they decided that they could make the audience on a slope and do the stages flat. But there's still a few raked stages around, and it's interesting for dancers and that to dance on a raked stage because they've got to get something that they have to get used to. But fascinating.
A few years ago I saw a big American blues guy who was about 25 stone, and he didn't realise it was like that. The first time he ran down the stage and then he fell off. The front of the audience were going, whoa, let me help you, you know, he's a big guy, you know.
I think you've got to prepare yourself that you're going on this raked stage, sloping stage.
I think this guy just turned up.
Imagine dancing, doing Strictly Come Dancing on a raked stage.
I'm going to see the Temptations here next Saturday.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so we can go across the road then, let's see the footage. And I'll tell you what, we'll make our way back to the hub via the wall, the medieval wall that was around Newcastle. And there's, yeah, and my wife used to work down here, doing the bingo. She used to call the bingo out in the nobles. And when I met her, I asked her where she worked, she said Pink Lane. I went, all right.
It's terrible.
I mean, across the road there used to be a Chinese shop that used to have like a block of toilets in like a PTE office. When my dad used to work at the PTE office, so when I was young, I was only about 9, 10. I mean, I would go to, are you away to work? Yeah. I'll meet you at the Chinese place. I'll meet you after work. But I just thought, well, and then like you had Cardboard like opposite before when like obviously I think one of the shops went up and smoked in it. I can't remember rightly.
But nice bakers there now.
Yeah.
Nice bakers.
It's somebody told me that something new.
There's actually another one inside, just behind us, but it's not labeled.